We're now live.
Thank you, Norman. So good afternoon, everyone. I will now ask, well, the live stream has started. Before we formally start the meeting, I'll go to each councillor present in turn to confirm that they can hear and be heard. This is a legal requirement for virtual meetings, and where practical, please also have your video switched to on so that you can be seen by those in attendance and any of the public who are watching. So I begin with the cabinet members. Councillor Norman.
Yes, thank you. I can hear and see.
Thank you. Councillor Chowns.
Yes, thanks. I can hear and see.
Councillor Crockett.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Councillor Harrington.
Yes, Leader, I'm here and I can hear you.
Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey.
Right, I can see and hear you.
Thank you. And Councillor Tyler.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I can see and hear you.
And the cabinet support members, Councillor Harrington.
I'll go again, yeah.
Yes, Councillor Hardwick. Apologies.
Yes, I can hear.
John H. Senior.
Yes, Councillor Jimman sent his apologies. Councillor Selden.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you.
And Councillor Bartlett.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you.
Thank you. So group leaders or representatives and scrutiny chairs. First of all, Councillor James.
I can hear and see you.
Councillor Lester.
Yes, I can hear and see you, but please be advised that my laptop is really temperamental, and at a meeting yesterday, the Zoom function lost the video camera, so it's a bit tentative. So and whilst I'm in a position where the camera goes off, I try to re-engage it and it just won't work. So if you do lose the visual facility, apologies, but it's something wrong with the laptop.
Yeah, but we will have the sound, will we, Councillor?
Yes, the problem was I was at a parish council meeting yesterday and it malfunctioned again, and they could hear me, but I couldn't hear them. So I hope that doesn't happen again.
Okay. Councillor Matthews.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Yes, see and hear beautifully, thank you.
Good. Councillor Gandy.
Yes, I can see and hear you.
And Councillor Swinglehurst.
Yes, I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Right, thank you. We have a number of officers attending who will be introduced as they are called upon. Thank you, and I am now formally opening this meeting. I would like to start by asking John Vickers, the Assistant Director of People and Performance, to provide a statement on COVID-19 on behalf of the Chief Executive in the light in pursuit of the Prime Minister's statement on Tuesday.
Thank you, Leader. Can everybody hear me okay? Great, thank you. From the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Herefordshire Council made it clear that staff wellbeing was our #1 priority, and this has guided our approach throughout. One of the benefits of this approach has been the assurance this has given staff who have shown tremendous commitment and dedication to keeping our county safe. As more unlocking of the economy progresses and employees return to work, we recognise that every employer has to risk assess and manage their own location and places of work to ensure they are COVID-19 secure. In the council, we will only open our buildings to staff and to the public when we are satisfied that they are COVID-19 secure locations. In our main office at Plough Lane, we have put measures in place, which includes retaining 2-metre social distancing for a further period. We will keep this under review, but have no current plans to reduce it. We will advise staff in advance when we believe it is appropriate to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As the statement records, the Council continues to be very concerned for the safety of its employees and the communities that we serve. We encourage members of the public to continue to be careful. 2 meters distancing is bound to reduce the chance of infection, and we would urge you all to continue in that way. The Council itself is fortunate to have an organisation that can operate in many ways with social distancing. This is not so easy for many businesses, for instance, shops, coffee bars, hairdressers and pubs. But as measures are introduced to reduce the impact of lockdown, we do encourage those businesses to continue to operate in ways which, as far as possible, limit the possibility of infection. Herefordshire has been less badly affected by the virus than other comparable areas, and we ask for your help and support in maintaining that position. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Council's website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making an official recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Please remember that others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. In line with normal committee practices, all microphones, apart from mine, have been placed on mute. When called on to speak, your microphone will be unmuted, and once you have finished, it will be muted again. When cabinet colleagues wish to speak, please use the raised hand icon. I will then invite you to speak in turn. Please remember to lower your hand again after you have spoken. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by cabinet members, I would invite group leaders in turn to provide the views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I'll also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. If any attendee loses connection, the meeting will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. If it is not possible to recover the connection within a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum of cabinet members remains able to hear the proceedings and be heard. If you plan to leave before the end of the meeting, please can you indicate this in advance. Where cabinet members are required to vote on an item, I will ask each cabinet member in turn to indicate verbally if they are for, against or abstaining. The results of the roll call will only be recorded in the minutes of the meeting where there is a requirement to record the named vote. If a cabinet member has not been present for the whole of the discussion on an item due to technical failure, they should not vote on that item. Are there any questions about the procedures before we continue? I see none. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. I know Councillor Peter Jimman is unable to attend, and the Chief Executive, Alistair Neil, is not able to either. Are there any others?
No, there aren't, Chair.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests for items on the agenda today? I see none. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 4th of June. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer, so I will ask cabinet members in turn to confirm that they agree the minutes. Councillor Jones. Councillor Crockett.
Agree.
Councillor Davis.
Agree.
Councillor Harrington.
Agree.
Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey, are you able to hear me?
Agree.
Councillor Norman.
Agree.
And Councillor Tyler.
Agree.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is to receive any questions from members of the public. Members of the public continue to have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We received 3 questions for this meeting, and a response has been published as a supplement for the agenda papers. Those who have submitted questions have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary, or to send an audio or video recording, or to join the meeting to ask their questions live. I will now ask the clerk to confirm how many supplemental questions have been received. First of all, questioner Mr. Palgrave. Do we have a supplemental question?
Yes, we do, Chair. John Coleman is currently sharing the question on screen from Mr. Palgrave, but his question is, will the evidence submitted by the Council be made public?
The main question was replied to by which cabinet member?
Cabinet Member Councillor Harrington, Chair.
Thank you. So, Councillor.
I see no reason why it shouldn't be, as long as there's no matters that are outstanding in terms of necessary confidentiality, but absolutely that's the ambition.
Thank you. The next one has come from an anonymous questioner, and they have sent a supplemental question as well. Yes.
The question reads, thank you for your reply. However, as stated previously, I am unable to claim from the discretionary business grant because I do not pay business rates nor have business premises, and the criteria clearly states, unfortunately, those in different circumstances to the above, such as businesses working from home or mobile-based businesses, are currently not eligible for this grant. I am outside your criteria as I work from home, then go on site with clients. Please can you advise what support is available to me, as I am not getting the furlough payments either? And that is a question for Councillor Harvey as the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey, are you able to answer that one?
Well, I would hesitate to answer that, because I think the important thing is that we get the detail of this questioner's circumstances. So I presume that governance support has got his contact details, and we'll get the finance team to see what we can do to try and better understand whether there's any grant funding that's available that he can qualify for.
Point of order, Chairman.
Yes, please, please do.
I welcome the question. I think it's a valid and really good question, so please don't get me wrong. But I just seek clarification from the monitoring officer. Is it the case that we accept anonymous questions?
Would the monitor officer wish to comment on that?
Yes, our practice is that we have to confirm that the person is able to actually ask a question in accordance with our constitution, but we do not have to publish their names as part of the actual meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the third question is from Ms. M. Setterfield. This again was for Councillor Harrington, and she has a supplemental question. The clerk would like to read that as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your heartening reply. May I please just follow up by asking exactly what measures will be in place by September, and where will they be?
Thank you for that reply. I can't give you that detail yet. We're working at this at full pace at the moment. That obviously, as we know, the money's coming in 2 tranches. We don't get a lot of COVID emergency funding because it's basically in relation to what your previous public transport capacity was, and ours, as we know, has not been very good. So we've got in total about 200 grand, 50 to start the immediate measures, and 150 to try and do things soon after, pretty much in preparation for going back to school in September. So at the minute we have detail, I will share it. I've already offered for Ms. Setterfield and anyone else who wants to feed into the transport team to send on any details, any ideas, any queries. Happy to receive all.
Right. Well, thank you for those questions. I'll now move on to the next item, which is questions from councillors. And the first one, I think, is from Councillor Phillips, which is for the Cabinet Member of Commissioning and Assets, Councillor Davis. So, Councillor Phillips, do you have a supplemental question?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Davis, for that reply. As you know, I've been in contact with officers trying to get this open. Very pleased that hopefully that they will be opened. And my supplementary question is, can she confirm that the administration is committed to retaining all these sites open in the future?
Councillor Davis, would you like to respond to that?
That's an easy one. Yes, there's no intention to close any of the sites.
Then the second question is from Councillor Durkin. Councillor Durkin, do you have a supplemental question?
And it relates specifically to shopkeepers' support anxiety and their disappointment of a matter that is not, it is tangential to what I asked the original question, but I will ask that it can be asked in any case.
Councillor Durkin, did you have a supplemental question?
Yes, I'll try to get approval, Chairman, because I want to extend my original question to include the fact that there are a number of businesses out there who are anxious and concerned about other matters. And it's as my original question was to do with anxiety from shopkeepers. I'm looking to see if I can ask the further anxiety issues relating to the shopkeepers.
I think we'll try and attempt to address that for you, Councillor Durkin. I think it's a matter of public concern. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leader. My supplement question also relates, as I say, to further anxiety to shopkeepers. It concerns the current project of active travel measures following the statutory guidance on network management following COVID-19 and the proposed closure of county town centres. And you may take this as lobbying, Councillor. Okay, thank you. I understand that traders were notified on the 20th of June with the consultation ending on the 23rd of June. Now, there's a lot of concern and anxiety about the proposal from shopkeepers across the county and from residents in particular. To my knowledge, there is considerable anger in Ledbury. The rurality of Herefordshire with its villages and hamlets are not easily linked to town centres, and as such, there is difficulty to travelling to town centres and depend on cars, unlike Hereford City. Thus, Herefordshire residents will be forced to not use town centres due to restrictions and may go to out-of-town shops. The Government Committee for Climate Change has called for the need to revive the economy, and that was also repeated locally as well. There is great concern for the market towns of Herefordshire, especially those with this very short consultation time. To try to introduce some confidence, how may it be demonstrated by the administration that measures are in place to ensure that consultation with every resident and shopkeeper is robust, with comments having been recorded, considered and addressed with commentary and reasons? The alternative appears to be just forcing the active travel measures proposal through with the closing of town centres county-wide, thus adversely affecting shopkeepers and independent traders. Thank you, Leader.
Yes, well, Mr. Durkin, that's quite a long essay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Are there any elements of that, Councillor Harrington, that you could respond?
I'm happy to address all of Councillor Durkin's concerns and anxieties and those he's relaying on behalf of retailers. So the very first thing to understand, Councillor Durkin, is that legislation is not required under this emergency provision. We took the view that we should try and do as much consultation as possible in the shortest period of time as possible. Many authorities have not consulted, and that is a matter for the other authorities. In relation to what we are trying to do, we are required by government to do this, or they will come in and do it for us. So it comes down to that classic tension between trying to do something as quickly as possible in the best way possible against trying to please everyone. Now, what I have made very clear to officers who are running this and trying to get it into place as soon as possible is that we will continue to talk to any traders and retailers that come and address this to us, any parish councils that we've all consulted with, but any ones that come forward at this stage. I have been speaking to many shopkeepers in Ledbury and in Hereford throughout the last few days, looking at what they are saying specifically, seeing if we can change it, seeing if we can come to a compromise. And some of those changes have and will be made. So it is not a perfect situation, but it's incumbent upon us to do this, to do it quickly, and to make sure that we make the provision ultimately for the safety of people who will be using our streets. But I absolutely assure you that we will continue to speak to traders and retailers and anyone else who has concerns, and anyone that you know of, Councillor Durkin, I would greatly appreciate you feeding that into me.
Thank you, Councillor Angela. Thank you, Leader, for your forbearance.
Right, now the next next question is from Mr. Shaw, who is yet again demonstrating his interest in English literature. Do you have a supplemental question, Councillor Shaw?
Yes, Councillor Shaw does. Would you like me to read it out, Chair?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. I was delighted to read that the annual plan will not be adversely affected by any spending on the emergency travel measures. I earnestly hope too that the loss of 4 months parking income that is ring-fenced for the public realm will also have no injurious effect on the annual plan. To that end, can the Cabinet member explain whether his department was overfunded in its budget, or what economies he is intending to make to cope with the loss of this revenue? And that's a question for Councillor Harrington.
Thank you very much. And a shame Councillor Shaw is not in the room. We could have carried on our Oscar Wilde Appreciation Society. First of all, there won't be a loss of 4 months worth of parking income. There'll be, we've decided, having been lobbied by parish councils, county councillors, including Councillor Durkin, in a roundabout way, members of business groups, and various other people, we took the decision that a short-term boost was something that we were happy to try and provide for the traders and retailers in Hereford who are feeling very, very anxious at the moment, as Councillor Durkin has said, and who feel that this, while numbers are still relatively low in terms of usage of the streets and the roads, that this would be a way of supporting them a little bit. We're happy to do that. The second tranche of this measurement will be in relation to offering incentives to stay for longer slightly on the outskirts of town. So what we don't necessarily want always, the reason we have a parking regime is we don't want people coming right into the centre of town, parking there, going and shopping for half an hour or so and then leaving. What we would love them to do, if they have to do that, that's fine. Let them come into town, let them pay a premium. It's not a huge amount of money. It's one less Savoy on my fish and chips, if I'm being realistic. Let them come into town if they have to. Those that are disabled can still have parking spaces, which actually, incidentally, in relation to what Councillor Durkin said earlier, will still be provided in relation to the COVID emergency travel measures in transport design in the centres of town. So the second part of that will be a incentivised scheme. So the losses will not be great. In fact, the losses may be reduced. If not, we might even make some money, and that relates to the second part of his question, because at the moment, many of our slightly out of city centre parks are underutilised at the swimming baths or Ross and other places. And therefore, we think by offering an incentive to stay for longer on the sort of perimeters of the towns and the city, people will come in, will park, will get a good deal, and will walk into town, not a very long distance, and we'll spend much, much longer dwelling in town, spending time in our shops, in our cafes, in our pubs, in our restaurants, in our hotels, obviously obeying all the rules in whichever way they understand they currently apply. But that's up to them, unfortunately. That's a movable feast. And within the actual second stage of the tranche of parking review that was going on in terms of parking charges, which will be happening in early next year, is we will look to see where we need to, if we do, to build in a recovery plan. But it was a difficult decision. We have parking charges for a reason, but I felt that in the circumstances, and in replying to the concerns and the fears expressed to me that this was the right thing to do. If Councillor Shaw wants any more information, he's quite happy. I'm quite happy for him to ring me directly and discuss it, or email me directly. We don't always have to do this through public questions, and that information can be in the public domain.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. The fourth question is from Councillor Milne. As the reply has been published, do you have a supplemental question, Councillor Milne?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Leader. I'm grateful to Councillor Harrington for his response, and I've no doubt the administration's concern accurately reflects that of the people of Herefordshire and those who have lobbied me in numbers, alarmed by the deteriorating condition of our rivers. Beefing up the nutrient management plan is a welcome step, and while it is easy to point the finger at Powys and its performance with regard to the intensive poultry units it has allowed to proliferate, can I have his assurance that we will use all the tools at our disposal through government and the NGAs to bring our own house in order, where necessary, by revision of our planning process and or acting against those whose practices damage aquatic environments, such as through poor handling of farm waste or soil loss. Now that we see, following the February floods, how vulnerable we are in a climate and ecological emergency.
Councillor Harrington, again, are you able to provide an answer?
It's a yes or no
yes,
answer.
The quick answer. It is absolutely yes or no answer, and the answer is, let me talk about it. No, the answer is, of course, yes, Councillor Milne. And there is much we can still do within our own power, which we are looking at further. But absolutely yes, and I welcome continued involvement at any stage in this.
Thank you, John, and I'm sure Councillor Singlehurst will appreciate that too, as the chair of that board.
Absolutely, and I should give credit to her. Actually, it was remiss of me not to do that. She's done a fantastic job on this, and I'm very, very grateful for her lead on this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrington.
Thank you. So I'm on now to item 6, which is the end of 2019-20 corporate budget and performance report. It's to review performance of this and the outcome for the year. This item begins on page 17 of the agenda pack, and I will turn immediately to Councillor Harvey to present this report.
Okay, thank you, Leader. I have the pleasure in presenting the end of 2019-20 corporate budget and performance report for Herefordshire Council. The recommendations in the report are that A, Cabinet review the performance and financial outturn for 2019-20 as set out in appendices A, B and D to G, and identifies any additional actions to be considered to achieve future improvements, and B, that the Treasury Management Outturn report at Appendix C be recommended to Council for approval. So this report covers the first full year in operation of the Coalition Administration on Herefordshire Council. And during the last year, we set ourselves a number of challenges in changing some of the priorities for this council and upping the pace at which we continue to deliver public services and community support. In addition to this, we faced a number of unplanned challenges, including 2 serious flooding incidents in the county and our shared experience of the first global pandemic in living memory due to coronavirus. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate and thank all members of staff for the fantastic job that they've done over the last year, delivering on the day job in often difficult circumstances and rising to the challenges posed by these emergencies and also by the unexpected. The amount of work out of hours working and weekends undertaken calmly and professionally by our officers in very testing conditions during these emergencies deserves our recognition and gratitude. As a consequence of these emergencies, many members of the public in Herefordshire have had contact with and support from our council staff, many for the first time. And I hope these experiences have provided the public with an insight into the valuable and often underappreciated work of public servants and local government workers. The overall outturn for last financial year shows a slight underspend of almost £570,000 as at the end of March 2020. And the proportion of our performance measures showing an improvement or remaining steady compared to last year of 71%, and that this is an improvement over the same period last year. And at the year end, 52% of the actions from our delivery plan are identified as complete or having been progressed within their planned timescales. And given the disruptions that we faced over the last 12 months, again, this is a creditable performance. And I draw members' attention to paragraph 3 of the report, where there are details of the performance of each of our directorates. Adults and Communities Directorate has made fantastic progress in delivering on its transformation programme, with the result of significant savings starting to be realised against budgets. As a Cabinet, we've committed to continuing to invest to save programmes in this directorate area, and look forward to these delivering further improvements in both service delivery and efficiencies in the coming year. Our Economy and Place Directorate delivered a balanced budget, which is a significant achievement for an area of the Council's operation which involves such a diverse range of technical services. Our Treasury Management and Capital Financing team have again made savings over the budget that they were allocated and that they've been handling in year. And together, these areas have assisted in balancing out the pressures which we've experienced over the last year, primarily from extra resource needing to be used in our legal team, supporting our Children's Directorate, and in the corporate, from the corporate area, and in our Looked After Children team in the Children and Families Directorate. We've had a significant underspend during last year in our capital programme, and this was due in part to moving planned delivery of some of our projects into future years as a consequence of the delays that were incurred during the flooding through the autumn and winter months, and latterly by COVID-19. This underspend has not resulted in the loss of any capital funding, which will be carried forward into this current financial year and is sitting in the budget for the capital programme now. The Council's total borrowing decreased during last year by nearly £10 million. And during that last financial year, with the Council's total external debt sitting at £181 million at the end of 31st of March. The Council's investments increased during last year by nearly £10.8 million to £238 million, and overall the Council over the last 12 months has complied with its prudential indicators, Treasury management policy, statement and Treasury management practices. A prudent approach has been taken in relation to investment activity, with the priority continuing to be on security and liquidity over yield. And further information on the Treasury management activities of the Council over the last year can be found at Appendix C to the report. Bad debts written off amounted to only 0.3% of the Council's overall revenue at just over £770,000 last year. And a further detail on this is given at Appendix D. I'd like to highlight that across the Council, all directorates delivered their revenue savings targets and are well on the way to implementing the actions necessary to deliver on the savings budgeted for this financial year. More information on that can be found at Appendix E. Due to the significant spending in the last quarter of the financial year relating to the coronavirus, the Council's risk register highlights a new risk associated with COVID-19, which presently we were unable to mitigate to a lower level by the end of the financial year. We entered this financial year retaining a significant amount of financial risk associated with the ongoing costs associated with the pandemic, and in planning for a possible second wave. We're hoping to receive further clarification from central government as regard the level of financial support that we can expect to receive to cover these costs that we're incurring locally. We will provide more information on the management of these risks when we provide quarterly financial performance reports during this coming financial year. I'd like to hand over at this point to my Cabinet colleagues so that they can highlight areas of particular interest in their respective Cabinet portfolios.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So I don't know who would like to go first. Put the blue hand up. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Cabinet, the end of the year performance report for the Adults and Communities Directorate shows that the Directorate has performed overall to a high standard throughout the year. There is, though, a wider context of achievement that is equally important to understand and is just as assuring. The year's positive performance follows 3 years of focused practice development and culture change within the Directorate. That includes, for example, Herefordshire having its own recognised strength-based model of practice, which has been of interest to both Welsh and English authorities. An enhanced level of support for staff, including new strengths-based supervision practices and enhanced learning and development opportunities. Robust practice auditing to ensure learning is embedded and quality of outcome for residents is assured. Importantly, targets have not been reached by closing the door to vulnerable people. Rather, the strength-based modelling, which is embraced Directorate-wide, has supported increasing numbers of people. The key difference is in the approach, which enables residents to build on their own strengths so that independence and well-being can be maximised. This results in better outcomes, with the need for less formal care. As a result of the approach, there has been a 30% reduction in complaints. There are no waiting lists for adult social care assessments, and overall customer satisfaction rates have consistently increased. This can be seen in the outputs from Adult Social Care Outcomes Framework, which looks at a variety of measures, including residents' feedback. This now ranks Herefordshire 8th nationally in resident quality of life, 8th nationally for residents who feel they have control over their daily life, and in the top quartile for residents in receipt of care who have had as much social contact as they would like. Some of the highlights from this year's performance have been seen through the success of the Talk Community programme, with emphasis on community engagement and resilience. This was acknowledged through the 2 most recent extreme events from flooding, which followed from Hurricane Dennis, and the still present coronavirus outbreak. This Directorate has been proactive in its approach and has been pivotal in its forward planning. I'd like to thank all the officers, key workers, and of course the Director for Adults and Communities, their continued support and commitment to this Directorate and to the people of Herefordshire. Thank you, Leader. Any questions?
Any Cabinet member want to ask Councillor Crockett any questions, or should we move on to the next volunteer? Councillor Chowns, and then Councillor Tyler.
Thanks, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Harvey, for your presentation of this report, and thank you to the Section 151 officer and all of his team for work on it. And I guess I'd like to start just by echoing the thanks that you gave to all of the staff team who have worked incredibly hard in recent months, especially dealing with a lot of very unexpected circumstances. And I think it's a credit to everybody that we've ended the last financial year in such good financial shape and kind of poised to go forward into the next year. The other thank you I'd like to give is to Councillor Marsh, who held this role of Cabinet Member for Environment, Economy and Skills for most of the last financial year. And so, the things that I'm going to talk about, I can't really claim very much credit for. It's all down to the officers and Councillor Marsh. But, it was a very successful year also for the Economy, Environment and Skills portfolio. On the environment side, I mean, you all heard me talk at the last Cabinet meeting about the carbon management plan, which marks a new milestone in moving us forward. In the last financial year, we formalised our zero carbon targets, a whole bunch of very exciting things were done. We raised new funds for external funding for programmes like the Warm Homes Fund, the March's Renewable Energy Project, extended the Business Energy Efficiency Scheme and so forth. And all of those are things that we're able to take forth into the new financial year and help to boost the local economy, as well as helping us move towards our environmental targets. We got extra funding for extending walking and cycling behaviour change. We reviewed our fleet and got 6 fully electric cars and so forth. We did lots of energy efficiency projects all across our own estate, and as I've committed under the carbon management plan, we're going to be pushing forward with all of that. On the economy side, lots of exciting projects which are ongoing now and going to be completed soon. So station approach to new student accommodation, which is such an important investment in, we've attracted private investment into the city to build that, and that's going to play such an important role in supporting our higher education sector. We've got the Shell store and the cyber centre coming on. Most recently, we've secured funding, although this is the new financial year, so perhaps I shouldn't talk about that, but funding to support the visitor economy and tourism and so forth. So lots of exciting work, and our skills development work as well has been recognised by the Education and Skills Funding Agency, and we've got additional funding this year on the basis of our performance. So altogether, lots of credit to everybody involved in all of that work, and I look forward to pushing it forward in the coming year. Thanks.
Councillor Tyler, you're next, I think. And then Councillor Harrington.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just like to reiterate really on everybody's saying, it's been a phenomenal couple of months, and our regulatory services have been remarkable, I think, and have been impressed. I've been impressed with the commitment and dedication that they've worked through the floods and COVID in the last 2 months of 1920. And they've delivered an excellent end of year outcome across the regulatory areas. Officers have recently stood down from COVID patrols, who have given up their weekends and evenings to do this, and have also gone out on district during the pandemic. With this stand down, this change in working pattern will ensure the EHOs to be better supported through the track and trace now that we'll go through, and which will most probably come busier. I'm really pleased to say that strategic housing exceeded the delivery of the affordable homes for the period by delivering 213, just above the target of 210. Because of what's happened over the last couple of months, this may have an impact on our affordable delivery going forward, but I'm hoping we can address that as we do that. Regarding the feasibility study for housing delivery, our soft market test has been completed for the council owned properties with a number of consultants, and a specification is now being written to enable the procurement process to get underway to commission a consultant, which will provide information of the most appropriate model to deliver housing. Once this is out to procurement, they will have 4 weeks to provide this information. I'm hoping that will come to Cabinet later on in September. As we know, the allocation scheme and Home Point had a huge delay with ongoing matters of IT and other written material. Then we had COVID, but I'm really pleased to say it'll be going live on the 22nd of June. That's on Monday, but that was just gone. I've not had anything that's come forward from any problems, but I'm hoping that this will help our housing tenants to bid better for their housing options. I'm really pleased to say that we are in discussions with the Herefordshire Community Land Trust to support their delivery of community-led housing, which will hopefully help the council meet the housing needs across the county. So that has been quite welcoming. We're still working on our housing strategy, our tenancy strategy, our temporary accommodation strategies. They're all underway. The supplementary planning document for affordable housing is currently out for consultation. So the housing needs assessment for the county is also being re-procured, and that is currently being done by the company called ICENI, which is ICENI. During COVID, our work for empty properties had to be suspended because we didn't feel it was fair to chase owners to do this while through that time. But we know government are encouraging us to sort of look at engaging with commercial properties for over accommodation above shops. So we have sent out letters to properties to encourage them to come and speak to us to see what we can do in delivering over the shops accommodation. Some of the schemes that have been that will nearly be completed, which is Hope Scott House, which is the main extension, has been completed. We visited there last week. It's an excellent site. There's 2 more pods coming into the grounds, and it will be part of the homeless pathway. So individuals actually stay for a period of time in the property and be assessed and seek the necessary help and support they will need as they get tenancy ready. And as it's in the past, it was just known as a drop-in centre, night in and move on. Widemarsh Street, we're aiming to complete by the 10th of July. It's been challenging, obviously, because of COVID, but this will give a 24-hour site for young people. And that's about all, but I'd just like to say thank you to all your officers and directors across the whole sector, because it's just been a really difficult time, and I'm just grateful for all the support that I've still received during this ongoing process. So thank you, Leader.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to echo what Councillor Tyler and others have said in relation to thanking the officers who've worked exceptionally hard during the last year in very, very, very challenging times. Officers within my directorate and others, and particularly the Section 151 officer and his team in the finance department, who I think really deserve praise and credit for the way they've handled the situations this year in relation to flooding and to COVID. It gets rather boring when Councillor Harvey praises the team so often, but it is with good reason, and we appreciate it very much. I won't talk through everything that's going on in the portfolio, because I take it the point of this is to sort of highlight some pluses in terms of budgets and some potential challenges. In terms of highlights, I'm very pleased that the economy in place revenue budget came in part on balance due to the improvements in the planning income in the final quarter of the year. We did have a challenge within planning. Some officers identified it as the Brexit effect, and we had a reduction in income. We had a slowdown that certainly gathered pace towards the end of the year and made up for any early part of that. Of course, we don't yet know what's going to happen for the year to come. Budgets within my other portfolios are going fine within the core strategy, transport review, or budget. Progression. The issue we do have is the oncoming problems that we're going to face around the damage that was done to the county via the flooding, through the flooding. Now, you know, we've had a potential ask of 12 odd million for the damage that's happened through this historic flooding, the once in 200 or once in 300 event of flooding, and we've had 3 sets of flooding and a very significant one after Christmas. We were led to believe that Belwyn would cover a large proportion of this, and the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Governments certainly gave us that. Well, I wouldn't say they did give us that impression, but they certainly are expected to support us at this time, and we were certainly led to believe by some political members that the money was there and we could crack on and get the work done. The reality is that we will have to be very careful about where we get the money from. The money isn't necessarily there, and we're having further conversations with MHCLG to make sure that they honour their commitments to local government. We cannot, as an authority, take a hit year after year in excess of £90 million a year adjusted for inflation with the complete withdrawal of the revenue support grant and still be expected to maintain resilience reserves for events like this that are, literally 1 in 100 years or 200 years events. That is not fair, equitable, or acceptable. So that is an outstanding issue, and we will have to, while we continue to challenge government, we will have to, in the next few weeks and months, come up with an understanding of how we are going to meet that challenge, and we already are discussing that. Apart from that, I just want to say that I've enjoyed working as a cabinet member for the first year, and I particularly enjoyed
Thank you. Councillor Norman, and then finally Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. And yes, echo points made by Councillor Harrington and others about how grateful we are for the work and efforts of all our officers. It's been really impressive and very thankful to them. Just one little point I'd like to make, talking to one or two officers who are normally working behind the scenes, but who through different arrangements because of COVID found themselves public facing, working with the community and so on. And I got really interesting feedback from some of them saying how much they'd enjoyed it and how much it had enlightened them actually as to, you know, what we're doing, how the public perceives us and so on. I thought that was very interesting, and the experience seems to have been very positive for all of them. And it just strikes me that we could possibly actually make some use of that and carry on with that sort of occasional opportunity in the future. Hopefully not in similar, rather extreme circumstances. So on to my report, my Children's and Families Performance Report. As a council, we signed up to the Children and Young People's Partnership Plan for 2019-20 with its core pledges of keeping children and young people safe, improving children and young people's health and well-being, helping all children and young people succeed, and ensuring that they are influential in their communities and listened to. So this was developed with children, with input from children and young people, and provides a clear focus for our collective commitment to improving the lives of children and young people in Herefordshire. And given the impact and potential impact of the pandemic, we need to consider what we should now be focusing on clearly. We were already working on issues such as mental health and emotional well-being, education, attainment, employment, being part of communities, keeping safe and so on. And we need to ensure that we take the impact of lockdown into account. And I very recently held a session with the partnership to look at how we can take the plan forward in the light of this impact, with meetings and consultations having to be mainly online. Obviously, this is not as easy as it has been. But some positive developments were discussed, including the news that Hereford and Worcester have been successful with an application to NHS England for mental health support teams, placing support workers in our secondary schools, working with all young people to enhance positive mental health. This is obviously in the future, but I think it has a bearing on what we've been working on in the past. Early intervention. Council investment in early help has enabled more early help and family support workers to provide more children and families with specialist support. The Solid Roots project, in partnership with Schools and Schools Forum, has started its speech and language project, including training for parents and early years foundation stage professionals, with 800 having registered for online courses, 159 professionals having trained in Solihull parenting programme, and of these 65 have gone on to train the trainer courses, provide long-term sustainability. And the project also provided translated materials for the development of materials for children with English as an additional language, and also arranged for support for home learning environments. Some of this has had to be paused due to the pandemic, but the programme has been extended to take this impact into account. Edge of Care, the Edge of Care service business case was approved during the past year, and recruitment has taken place. So the service is now in this financial year up and running to provide support, reducing the need for children to come into care, and also enable children and young people to be in care for shorter periods of time. Cabinet also approved the purchase of specific accommodation to support young adults with care experience, and this will be available with support services in July this year and will enable more young people to remain locally, and will also address some of the cost pressures that we experience. Councillor Tyler mentioned this, and in fact some of us had a visit yesterday to the premises, and we were very impressed indeed. They're going to be excellent and will provide a very welcome service for our young people. Children's safeguarding. And although we've seen the numbers of children in care rise over the year, there has been some stabilisation over the last quarter. And we're seeing results in terms of progressing special guardianship orders and appropriate ways of supporting children in family settings. This work will continue to be an area of focus during this next year. We continue to focus on improving social work practice in children's services, signs of safety. The strengths-based practice model has begun to be introduced during this year, and just before the pandemic, a significant number of staff had taken place in the initial training. This is being taken forward in a virtual world as we live with COVID-19. It is important, as the Ofsted focus visit of December 2019, which reported in the last quarter, confirmed what we know, that our practice still needs improvement in a number of areas. It was pleasing, however, to see that praise for our children with disabilities social care practice was praised. Recruitment and retention is key to enabling consistent good practice, and there have been successes with recruiting some newly qualified social workers, but we are still not able to recruit significant numbers of permanent experienced social workers, and so we do rely still on agency workers in our assessment teams and child protection court teams in particular. A number of performance indicators have shown improvement over the year, including the timeliness of visits. There are still areas we need to improve on, and these are the focus of the service's improvement plan and subject to review at the performance challenge sessions and at children and young people's scrutiny. Herefordshire introduced our new children's safeguarding partnership arrangements during the year and complied with government requirements to have these up and running, and it has been an opportunity to review the strengths of the previous arrangements and also build more effective multi-agency approaches to safeguarding. This is at an oh yes, and I should have added in there, the new independent chair joined us during the year, Liz Murphy, and she's been obviously helping us to review the strengths and the where we do need to make these improvements. This is at an early stage of development, and COVID-19 has impacted on some planned activities, including whole partnership workshops for all staff. 2 important reviews into peer-on-peer abuse and child exploitation were held by scrutiny. Very thorough work, for which I am very grateful. Many thanks to all involved. And Ofsted has also recognised the significant work that's been done on peer abuse. Schools and early years. We're really proud of the performance in Herefordshire in early years, and particularly of our primary schools, where we are now in the top quartile nationally in terms of outcomes, and showed improvements for the 2nd year in a row. Performance at secondary phase for the 2nd year in a row was not where we aspire to be. This was recognised by school leaders and council officers, and a number of initiatives have been put in place to address this. We will need to review these in light of the pandemic and the significant changes to education of our children and young people as a result. A very useful piece of HMI work, led work, has just been done on online learning across our schools, which will help to address future plans. It's clear that some children, especially those from disadvantaged families, have suffered significant setbacks through being out of school for so long, which we need to find ways to address. We are working to promote awareness of summer activities throughout Herefordshire and looking at what more can be done for specific groups, including children with disabilities. Quick word on the budget. Council did spend more than planned to support children in care and those with care experience. This was supported corporately overall, but the Directorate did manage its finances to contribute to covering the additional spending. The last quarter showed an improvement in the position due to full year placement costs not being as much as forecast, and also vacancy savings. Pleasing to note that in the summer last year, Herefordshire was ranked 2nd in the country for outcomes and value for money for pupils with special educational needs. Schools' capital investment strategy, and we were able to deliver a range of maintenance programmes and also start the significant build project for Mulbrook School. And finally, we are clear on what improvement is needed and very proud of our achievements. I'd like to pay tribute to all those who work with children and young people and their families across early years settings, schools, colleges, other providers, our partners, and of course our own staff. A huge amount of work has gone into improving the safety, well-being and quality of life for our children, for which I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. And finally, Councillor Davis.
Save the best till last. I'm proud to have the strangest portfolio area covering cultural services, waste, BBLP contract, procurement, council assets and public toilets, to name just a few. The first year in my role has shown me the resilience and determination of staff who have suffered at the hands of austerity for years. Despite numbers of staff in the council being at the lowest that I can remember, staff have worked tirelessly to ensure that services are provided with a limited budget. For all of those staff, I want to say that I'm in awe of your commitment to providing the best for the residents of Herefordshire. Property Services completed the disposal of the council's long leasehold interests at Rotherworth Industrial Estate, yielding a capital receipt of just over 2 million in addition to other disposals throughout the year. The service has taken on the management of the College Road campus following its role in supporting the acquisition. And very recently, the department has taken on the client side role in the management of the Maylord Orchard Retail Centre. Lots more to follow on that. The service has also enabled the delivery of various capital projects in support of education, children and adult services. The department staff have been instrumental in responding to the COVID emergency, in planning emergency hospital facilities with the NHS, additional mortuary facilities and a PPE hub for the council, as well as providing accommodation for key workers. I would like to extend my thanks to BBLP, who have been incredible in their response to the crisis, for providing support from building temporary morgues and adapting the 3 counties in Hillside to cope with demand. It's taken me a year to understand the intricacies of the BBLP contract for both the public realm, including the metrics, and I'm grateful, genuinely, to my fellow councillors and the public for allowing me this time. Further information on the next steps on ensuring we get the best from these contracts will be coming out over the next few months. The waste team have managed to keep all services running despite the pressure of 2 floods and the global pandemic. Never more has this been apparent than during the current pandemic, where waste collection staff have been working way beyond their normal hours to ensure that no household missed a collection from the start. I have mostly been impressed that every time I raised a query or an idea, the waste team were 50 steps ahead of me. I could not have asked for more. You will currently see that this end of year report shows a £250,000 saving for cultural services. I can confirm that this relates to the situation pre-budget setting this year when this was removed. Our cultural services staff have been phenomenal in their response to COVID, adapting from handing over books to handing over prescriptions and food parcels. The digital change of access to libraries has been a huge success and provides us with a supplementary service that will undoubtedly benefit the residents of Herefordshire. We have formed a good relationship with the Cultural Partnership, and we hope to work with them to build back better post-COVID with our leisure and cultural sector in a different way than has ever been done before. To cultural services staff and users, you are always a priority to this administration, and you are key to Cabinet's plan to recover and build better post-COVID as part of tourism, heritage and health and wellbeing perspectives. And finally, at the beginning of my year, I set out to transform procurement at the council with a project on progressive procurement, sometimes known as social value, sometimes known as the Preston model. At its heart is the desire to allow our procurement standards to be such that we engage with local organisations and base the awarding of contracts not based solely on best value, but with social value at its core. During COVID, this project has been underway with a local company. COVID has provided an opportunity for us to evaluate what is important to us as a society, and it has focused us on those social values. Therefore, this project could not have come at a better time when we need to focus on keeping as much of our council spend local in order for our beautiful county to recover. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. So now I'll turn to the group leaders. There's a full house this occasion, so it's very good to see you, Councillor Matthews. You're up with the technology now, which is fantastic. What I thought I'd do is I go alphabetically. I'm not quite sure where to start with the biggest party or whatever, but on this occasion I'll start alphabetically with Councillor Hardwick. And you're on.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Not a great deal to add, really. I think that all credit to the cabinet as we've got it formed at the moment, and all the officers. I think everything has been covered. Obviously, we've got challenging times to come with regards to the budget, because of the additional costs that have been incurred through the flooding issues and COVID-19. So I think the next 12 months are going to be extremely challenging. But as I say, all credit to the team for the work that's been done over the last 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. Councillor James.
Yes, well, of course, this is up to the point virtually when the current crisis started. So, the problems are going to come on from here on in, as it were, in this current year. I was a little bit concerned about Councillor Harrington actually saying about his fears about that the government may be not going to honour their financial and legal obligations as far as the floods and the current crisis is concerned. I mean, up to now, government have always been pretty good at that sort of thing. I remember the foot and mouth and the floods at the beginning of this century, where the government were honoured their obligations morally and legally. So I'm very concerned about that, and what contingency plans are in place. But if we if we find ourselves with a big shortfall, how we're going to deal with that. And whilst that is not this particular item is not about that, but I'm increasingly concerned about that. I do think that many of the officers have done a very good job. I'm a little concerned about the fact that we haven't opened our waste sites, and the public are getting very, very anxious in some parts of the county that we haven't done that, because we're expecting people to open pubs, and the shopkeepers and the supermarket staff are managing their businesses, and yet the council can't manage the waste sites.
So James, do you want those to be taken as questions, or do you feel they've already?
Well, yes, I Councillor Harrington, actually brought up something that I think can be possibly very worrying, that the government are probably not going to honour their obligations as far as the Belwyn formula is concerned, and the undertakings that they've given, albeit I'm not sure whether they've been done in writing. They certainly have done them verbally in supporting local government in the current crisis.
Yes, well, on that subject, we are very actively engaged with our MPs and also various ministers to try to get money out from them. They are arguing that a lot of this does not fall within the Belwyn formula. And we are continuing to argue with them because it's a significant issue for us as a council. Councillor Harrington, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, yes, please. If I could come in. I mean, I completely share Councillor James's. I mean, we don't often agree, but we do sometimes agree, and he makes an absolutely perfect point. I mean, we are at the moment we are being let down by central government. There is no other way to look at it. Now, whether or not we fall within Belwyn is not really the pertinent issue. Belwyn is there for a particular recovery. If something is does not fall within the strict guidelines of Belwyn, then it's still incumbent upon the government to provide support to a county that has had damage that is unprecedented in recent history, not just in recent history, in the last 100 or so years. And so I totally agree with Councillor James. And in relation to the contingency, that is exactly what we are planning now, Councillor James. There will be some hard choices to make. And those hard choices will be directly as a result of the failure of central government to support us at this extremely trying time. And it is very disappointing. And I can't say anything more than that, apart from the fact that we continue to press.
And your other question,
can I just say Leader, can I just say one other thing? I mean, my concern is also the fact if we have a resurgence of the COVID crisis in the autumn, if government are questionable in their support to local authorities, then it's going to be very, very difficult to deal with that crisis. If, and I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does happen, they will put local government in a very, very difficult position.
Yes, that's a very good observation. We're told that we're supposed to have a contingency for major flooding events, and that's how the government has said we should. So you can imagine if we'd had that contingency and that contingency had then gone, what are we to do when there's another incident? It's just an unreal world that the government seems to be living in. And we are pressing as much as we possibly can, the relevant ministers. Councillor Davis, do you want to comment about the waste centres? I think you have really answered that, haven't you, already by saying...
No, I didn't. I take a little bit of umbrage at saying that the council can't control or can't cope with the waste. Our teams have not missed one collection. Go and speak to other councils throughout the UK and ask how many of them have not managed to do it. And what I would like to do is celebrate how well our staff have worked all year, rather than focusing on the fact that 3 sites haven't opened. They have been working tirelessly since the beginning of COVID to look at ways in which we can reintroduce sites in a phased and sensible way, much like many other people are doing. I'm not sure whether you've seen the answer to Councillor Phillips' question, but all of the satellite sites, we are aiming for them to be open by the 6th of July. So every single person that lives within a site that has not had a satellite site open near them, we've been collecting extra waste from those residents. So the options have been there for people. I have spoken to so many residents who have been really upset, and I completely understand that, why they'd be really upset during this time and how important that is to them to have waste collections. I've spoken individually to them at length, and once I explain the situation, that actually it's costing us a significant more amount of money in order to open these sites. And I'm not willing to take a chance on central government giving us that money when we know we're not going to get full reimbursement. I would rather take a chance and do it in a phased approach so that it works correctly. And so far, our tactics on this have not failed.
Can I say just one thing, Leader, before I go? I made no criticism of the collection of waste. That wasn't the point I was making. It's about the recycling centres and the fact that a number of people are threatening to withhold their council tax, which is a futile threat. But anyway, that's by the by. Because of the failure to maintain that service.
Just wonder if you would be able to suggest where I got that money from, Councillor James.
Well, perhaps some of the money that's gone on buying the centre property in Maylords.
Well, let's move on. I think Councillor Lester, you're next in alphabetical order.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just pick up on that issue, seeing as it's a hot topic, I think first of all, these aren't satellite sites. They are recycling sites. And, I don't think people from Ross or Bromyard or Kington would think of their recycling site as a satellite site. It's a main site that's important to them. And it's in no way it's playing second fiddle to somewhere else that may be larger. But surely, if you were interested in phasing in the process, the best thing would have been to do is to open all of the sites, but reduce the amount of opening hours. And I know what they do in other countries is they have the same staff operating different sites. And so, take an example of Bromyard or something, they would open once every 2 weeks and Ledbury once every 2 weeks, and you could alternate the staff there so that you could achieve the coverage, even though you wouldn't have achieved the opening hours that would have been achieved. But if I can go on to the comment about the performance report, the Conservative group would fully acknowledge that this has been a very challenging year, and we echo the sentiments that have already been expressed about the dedication of the workforce and the partners in the face of challenges that we wouldn't really have anticipated. So well done on that score. Secondly, the overall underspend we welcome, and it's commendable that this has been achieved. Due to the COVID crisis, no doubt the financial situation will be significantly affected, but it's a good thing that we start this financial year, next financial year, in such a position with underspends before we have to deal with these huge challenges. With regard to adult social care, we are very pleased to note the developments. They just go from strength to strength, and this is to be commended, and it says a lot about the staff and the management of what we're trying to achieve. This hasn't been done overnight, and I thank Councillor Crockett for acknowledging that much work had been done prior to this administration. But the progress and the continuing progress with innovations with regard to the strength-based model, the reducing the numbers that require long-term assistance, all of this is extremely encouraging. And when you read that we're bucking the trend in very many areas, this is extremely impressive, and we commend that. It is gratifying to note that the Talk Communities project is really working well and coming into its own. This initiative was given the go-ahead by the Conservative administration, so something for us to be proud of, but it's really good to hear that the new administration is carrying on with that great work, and it's a testament to the officers also who are implementing these changes. So very good, and especially at a time when it's most needed. With regard to children's services, Councillor Norman's summary highlights lots of the positives, and we welcome this, and we fully recognise the challenges that exist with regard to providing services for children, because they're the most important in many ways. And there are, by the sounds of Councillor Norman's summary, there are very many exciting initiatives that are coming and going to be introduced, and you can rest assured that we will give our full support to those initiatives. And we would also like to thank all of those who are focused on providing children's services. That's really, really important. Just 2 points to raise though. We note from the report the looked after number is 352. That sounds like to me one of the highest figures it's ever been, and we note our concern about that. I know that the latest figure is 345, so that number has come down slightly, but we remain very concerned that pressure and that need to ensure that children have a lasting outcome is still an outstanding issue for the council, despite a lot of work done on it. And the other point we'd like to register is that whilst the number of looked after children number remains high, we note that the number of children on a care protection plan is low, and we would just therefore ask for a reassurance that the threshold being used is correct, especially when, no doubt, because of the impact of the lockdown, this has meant that some children haven't received the social interaction that would normally happen under normal circumstances. In terms of supporting the economy, we acknowledge the fact that dealing with the flooding issue is a really costly business, and I hear the comments that are being made about flooding. My only point to make on that, and we wish you the best of luck in dealings with that, but I would be working with government rather than arguing with them. That's surely the best way forward. In the report, the points about the progress of the Shell store, the cyber centre, and the expansion of the Hereford Enterprise Zone are very exciting and encouraging. In terms of reflecting on performance, these initiatives were created by the last administration, and I think this needs to be noted. However, in order for the Hereford Enterprise Zone to be effective and to ensure that Herefordshire attracts the businesses, I think it would be a huge mistake not to build the Southern Link Road. We all know that the administration lost the capital funding for this project, but that's not to say that the importance of the building of the road has not diminished. And in order to fully take advantage of the progress and the investment that's going on in that the Hereford Enterprise Zone, we can only see that the sensible way forward is to build that Southern Link Road. Lastly, on the car parking issue, I would just like to raise, it says in the report that there was a backlog of appeals of 2,000. It's really encouraging to note that this has been dealt with, but I don't think the report goes into detail as to why we had this issue in the first place, and I would seek clarification on that. And then lastly, while we're on the subject of car parking, it's pleasing to note that the Cabinet member, Councillor Harrington, changed his mind in reintroducing car parking charges the week that the shops were open. There's nothing wrong in making a U-turn so long as it's ensuring that you're going in the right direction. And so I would ask the Cabinet to be mindful of this when it comes to changing direction in other matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. Perhaps I'd ask Councillor Norman perhaps to comment on the looked after children numbers and the care plan, the threshold being used. I know, as I see the figures, Councillor Lester, the numbers are perhaps going down a little bit, but the significant costs are really in one area, which is those with multiple difficulties. And that's where we get a huge hit. Just one or two people added to that element, as you know, has an enormous disproportionate effect. Councillor Norman, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you. I think there is concern that during the lockdown there's been far less opportunity for eyes and ears and you know, ensuring that young people are safe, and that is concerning. Although, as I understand it, schools have kept in regular contact with children who have a care plan, and even if they haven't been in school. And I think the worry has been that many of those children who should be and we'd like to be in school have not been. But a lot of effort's been made in trying to keep in touch with them. But I absolutely take the point. It is concerning that we haven't had the opportunities we normally have to keep in touch. As far as the threshold goes, I understand this is something that is being looked at carefully. It's an issue that Ms. Murphy, the new independent chair of the scrutiny board, has raised and is discussing with Chris Baird and other officers. So that's something that we're sort of keeping under review. But yes, it is something we need to very much keep an eye on. Absolutely.
And the other point, perhaps, Mr. Lester mentioning about Councillor Lester mentioning about the loss of the money for the SLR. I don't know whether.
Yes, I'll happily answer Councillor Lester on that. I mean, I think it's important to have a bit of clarity in these issues. So we did not lose the money. We were not in a position to have progressed anything when we came in as administration after nearly 5 years of this previous administration having the money. Planning permission was about to expire when we came in. We took the decision to extend it so that the review was fair. We then spoke to the LEP about a variation so that we could try and get the review in, because we hadn't even prepared a business case that was able to be submitted to the DFT. And unfortunately, we didn't receive support from anyone on that issue. And the LEP made a decision on the basis that the project could not be delivered in time that was required by the funding criteria. So we may have made that decision. Our review is just about to conclude, but we didn't make it. That money was withdrawn, quite frankly, because of the inadequacies of the way that the previous administration managed this project. So I'm not saying that in the future we may not consider the need for roads, and I'm not saying that we may not have made that decision. But the fact is, the previous administration put us in that position that we couldn't even make a choice. And there are further irregularities, which we are working through in terms of some of the budgeting and mechanisms that have previously gone on, including accounts from 2016 not yet being signed off by auditors because of issues that we are going through now. So let's just keep some balance and some clarity on things, and it all come out in the wash, as my grandmother used to say. She went to the laundrette.
Hey, Councillor Marsh, would you like to have any questions or comments on the presentation so far?
Yes, thank you. We definitely huge support for the strength-based approach, which has worked in adults and community, and so glad that's being worked out in children. And just to say that in general, I feel that a strengths-based approach will be a very good basis for what is undoubtedly a difficult year ahead. I was in Appendix D about the debt write-offs. There was a little mention about the exhausting process of getting money back from debtors who are in poor financial position. And I was very glad to hear from our 151 officer that now we have signed up to the CAB protocol on collection of outstanding council tax debts, and also that for those this year who qualify for the council tax support scheme, that they in fact won't have to pay the remaining money because it's covered by central government. I'm well aware that there will be increasing pressure of numbers of citizens who find themselves having difficulty paying council tax. So I am especially pleased that we have signed up to this protocol, which will help manage the process in as practical and fair a way as possible. Appendix E for the savings, I was glad to hear from Councillor Harvey that we are on track, but also concerned as always that continuing cuts are necessary both this year and next year because of drops in central government. And they look, yes, they already look very difficult to achieve. And now, of course, there may be more need for savings because of shortfalls in money from central government. I was particularly concerned that there's a 5% drop for our central team, who, as everyone says, have done such a splendid job, and also that waste and sustainability are due to lose 200,000. And I entirely understand that we have to have a balanced budget, but I do feel it's worth pointing out that this is not where we would want to be. On risk management, I'm very glad to see that the net zero carbon has now come in as a risk to be managed. I think we can all see now that things like resilience to flooding are going to be increasingly vital, as well as cutting our carbon, whatever they're called, emissions. And also impressed that COVID rightly is not only on the risks, but has actually got its own personal risk register, because the risks it poses are just so huge for the council as a whole. And of course, the phosphates in the lug are, as we know, a continuing threat. March, the end of this year that we're hearing the report on, was, as we know, unprecedented in that 1 in 3 of our population found themselves instructed to stay indoors, except, well, everyone was told to stay home. 1 in 3 of our population were told to only exercise, and over 7,000 people were defined as clinically vulnerable. And I just want to say, as because of that, that I really do not see these active travel measures as town closures. These measures are town openers. These measures are being put in place so that 1/3 of our population and the clinically vulnerable can at least feel moderately safe in our independent shops, in our tiny streets, in our market towns. In Leominster, we've got pavements that are less than 1 metre wide. So these closures, these part-time pedestrianisations and reallocations are a vital offer of solidarity to the people in our county. And that is my rant.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor
Right, Leader. First of all, I wish to take issue with your insensitive remarks a little while ago. I've had a very hurtful and difficult time to deal with over recent months, and obviously you hadn't noticed that, but we will move on. First of all, I'd like to note and thank the directors and the cabinet members for their budget performance. And I'd also like to, on behalf of my colleagues, welcome the progress of the cyber unit at Rotherwas, which I think is one of the most important businesses we've got progressing. Also, the scheme of Hillside, which is something which is essential because a lot of nursing homes are finding it difficult to retain their businesses, and that will be essential in years to come. Also, I noticed that Councillor Harvey quite rightly said she had a underspend, but I can refer her to page 19, paragraph, beg pardon, paragraph 7, where it says the Cooperative Centre has an overspend of 568,000, partially due to a significant number of vacancies in the legal services and a reliance on interims to provide the support for the council. Any organisation, and particularly a local authority, it's absolutely essential that we have a full legal team in place, because so many things have to go through that department before they can be approved. And it's very hard on the monitoring officer at the moment with so much other work to deal with. And a little while ago, we brought in special measures to try and encourage senior social workers by paying their house movement and helping them in all sorts of ways and upping their wages and salaries to compete with elsewhere. So if finance is the problem, perhaps we could have a look at that. So could either you or Councillor Harvey or the monitoring officer please answer me on that issue to see if there's anything that can be done to put that department up, bring that department up to strength.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. I must apologise that you found my comments insensitive. I was welcoming you because for reasons that many know you weren't able to attend previous meetings, but my apologies for that. Councillor Harvey, do you want to comment on the issue in overspend in the Corporate Services Department?
Well, I'll start off, and if the monitoring officer can provide me with additional context, that would be good. It is concerning, Councillor Matthews, and it's not an issue that we take lightly. I think there's an awful lot of work that we've been doing to try and encourage solicitors to come and join us here at Herefordshire, and also to grow our own. In the same way as it's been difficult to attract social workers, it is tough when you can earn an awful lot of money being a solicitor in private practice, but there are very important specialisms in local government law, particularly in the children's safeguarding area. And we have had to call on outside resources in order to support the work of the council in its care services. So it's not something that we're asleep on the job over. It's just very difficult, and continue to make the progress that we can. And we're looking at finding innovative ways to try and encourage solicitors to come and join us. Claire, if have you got anything that you can add to give Matthews some comfort on this?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Harvey. I can confirm that is the position. There is a reshaping of legal services being undertaken at the moment, which looks to ensure that all the functions of the council are covered, that we have the right people in the right jobs, and obviously there will be vacancies therefore advertised, and I hope that this time next year we will have a fully staffed legal service.
Thank you. Councillor Selden.
Thank you, Leader. My group welcomes the report, obviously, especially the underspend, and we note that I, for one, have not received one grumble from our staff about reallocation or the way they've performed during the crisis. And if anything, members of the public I've been speaking to have nothing but praise for the way that, certainly the finance department has performed in getting business grants out and the way they've been helpful and got as much out there as possible. Undoubtedly, there are challenges ahead. The extraordinary circumstances in which we live won't come cheap. And I'm sure that the government is now scratching its head and wondering how it's going to fund the whole of the public sector going forward. It would be really nice, actually, Leader, if we could have the Conservative group helping us liaise with central government rather than sniping at us from the sidelines, because we're going to be in this boat in all together, and it would be nice. But then, hey, I doubt that your Conservative central office would like that very much, would they? Thank you, Leader.
Point of order, Chairman.
Please go ahead, Councillor Lester.
If you recall, Councillor Selden, we have offered our help in the past on various issues. I didn't say that we weren't going to help in any issue. The point I made simply was that I wouldn't argue with government, I would work with them. If you need our help in doing that, then please ask.
Councillor Lester, I will give you a call. Thank you. Okay, and now the Scrutiny Committee chairs. Councillor Gandy, I think you did have a question which you wanted to raise.
Thank you, Leader. It's obviously under the Children and Young People's section, particularly point 33, which refers to the Oral Health Action Plan and various issues around childhood dental health. I'm a little bit frustrated about all of this. In the children's plan that was published in 2015, one of the key problems identified then was the dental health of our young people, particularly children under the age of 5. On the 17th of September 2018, the Scrutiny Committee held a spotlight review in which we looked at children's dental health and what could be done to improve it, because Herefordshire is particularly poor in their performance with regards to this particular issue. This was attended by NHS England, Public Health and various other agencies. And one of the recommendations at that time was the fact that because we are a rural community, there are a significant number of residents with children who find it impossible, or if not very difficult, to actually get to a dental practice if they do not have their own transport, because there is no public transport. And one of the recommendations we made at that time was the fact that perhaps the NHS England could look at some form of mobile unit similar to the breast screening unit that goes around the county to help to deal with the issues we've got with the uptake of dental facilities for children, particularly the under 5s. To my knowledge, as I haven't seen the report, as the report's been delayed yet again, I've no idea what the report's going to say. But certainly it's 2 years since the spotlight review, and it's also it's 5 years since the 2015 children's plan was put in place. I know, there's all sorts of things in here about surveys, targets. They're fine, but what we actually want is some action. We want actually work to be carried out to get young children to dental practices to have their teeth checked, and that isn't happening. And I haven't worked out yet what NHS England and to a lesser degree Public Health have been doing since 2015 and in particular since 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gandhi. I don't know whether any cabinet member would like to respond to that, or an officer. Councillor Norman.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, and absolutely take Councillor Gandhi's point. It is a matter of real concern, has been for a long time, as she says. My understanding is that public health are developing ideas for this. One of them being looking at possible, mobile units is something I think we all feel would make a lot of sense, particularly for people in rural areas, but also a far stronger promotion of the benefits of, for example, painting teeth with, Councillor Gandhi, remind me, the
fluoride.
Fluoride, thank you for that. There are schemes like that which in themselves are fairly simple. We understand a lot of parents are not taking up the opportunity. So there's a lot of promotion needed in ensuring that parents understand the value of this. But a lot of this, I think we do need to come back to public health on. And clearly at the moment they have a few other things on their plate, but it's not going away. It was very much discussed at the meeting recently in looking at the plan, and we are aware it's a matter of concern and not to be forgotten, Councillor Gandhi.
I have to say I'm not optimistic. I mean, we're now 5 years down the track, and I accept that at this present moment in time, it's very difficult for public health and NHS England, and I do recognise that. But what's happened in the previous 4 years? Nothing, basically, nothing.
No, take your point and keep pushing us. I think dental and obesity was the other important one as well.
It was, and with regard to obesity, that's become now an even greater issue, because one of the things that has obviously come out of the COVID-19 crisis is the fact that obesity is a factor, significant factor, and we have got a serious issue in Herefordshire with our young people who are clinically obese, and we need to be tackling that as well. And I would want to see some actual action, not just surveys and targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gandhi, and for keeping us on the ball with that.
Okay. So finally, Councillor Swinglehurst, do you have any comments or questions relating to this report?
Thank you very much, Lisa. Well, I think I would certainly be remiss if I weren't to comment on what has been an extraordinary achievement by the Adults and Communities Directorate. Over the last few years, so those seeds were planted, and goodness me, aren't they bearing fruit? And what can I say about Mr. Vickers, the Director of Adult Communities? Some say he can walk on water, and some say he can talk to the animals. But honestly, that would be nothing compared to what he's done with this directorate. The strengths-based approach has really borne fruit, and the point is that not that we're looking just at headlines and numbers and isn't this all great, but actually what it's doing for the people, and that's what really this is about. Delivering the right care in the right way, in the right place, at the right time, the right level of care. So we're getting increasing satisfaction, as it were, and all this is being properly monitored. So there isn't a break in the chain, if you know what I mean. There isn't a weak link in this. This is just outstanding work, and that's why other authorities are looking to us and seeing what we're achieving. I have to say it's amazing. The numbers of the kind of the way that the delayed transfer of care numbers have crashed down from 180 to 40. It's incredible. Due to the investment in Home First that was made, a couple of years ago. But it's really outstanding work. So that it's great to see. I'm also very pleased to see the increased uptake of the Wish website. I remember when that was just an idea. So it's really, really good that that's getting traction, because actually it's quite a key piece of the puzzle. And obviously the talk community is just going from strength to strength and has more than proved its worth. I think we'll all acknowledge that over the last few months. So yeah, outstanding work. Thank you.
Well, it's very good to finish on such a positive note. Councillor Swinglehurst, thank you. This is obviously a matter of looking back. We made a small surplus, which is great news. But as people have said, this year is really quite different. Almost wherever you turn, the effects of COVID-19 are seen. So in education, how are our children going to cope going forward, what changes they're going to have to be there. Unemployment rates are almost certain to go up, and claimant rates. There are significant issues which we are facing, and as a cabinet, we're glad we had 1 year run in, and now the real work probably starts. It's going to be quite tough. We are determined to get through it with the officers. There's a great relationship, and we're looking forward to continue to lead this council through this difficult time. So I think I'm supposed to propose a resolution. Get the right screen.
Councillor Harvey's indicating, David.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. So, Councillor Harvey, what you were going to comment?
Yes, there were just a few points of clarification I think it's worth making in summing up. We've had some excellent comments from scrutiny chairs and from group leaders, and very much for putting all the energy and effort into having a look at the report and being so thorough. But just because this is going out live and it is a public record, I think there's a few points that do need to be responded on. And Councillor Davis, have you can you just clarify on the Maylord's Orchard point, and also on the matter of statutory provision of household recycling centres and waste sites?
Yeah, thanks for that. Actually, I was going to send it in an email, so this is perfect. Just with regards to mail-ors, I think it's worth making it very clear that the purchase of mail-ors did not come out of our revenue budgets. It came out of capital receipts, because there was an inference earlier that we could have used that to bump up waste. We're not able to do that. That would be against the rules. It's also worth noting that we had a steal in comparison to the College Road and Gardner Hall development that we bought just pre-election. The other thing regarding waste sites, Councillor Lester, I apologise if it's come across as that satellites means inferior to people that live in those market towns. That's not the way that it's meant to be interpreted. Satellite sites is what is used as the term for sites that are other than our statutory 7-day permit sites. So Hereford and Leicester, where are we going? Lempster, as Hereford and Lempster. So those are 7-day, and the satellite sites, including Ross-on-Wye that is now open, are referred to as those. So it's not got any inference to them being any less important. If they were any less important, we would be making decisions for them to not be open, which I've confirmed we would not do. And finally, with regards to wanting waste services to open up in a different way, so share the load across all of those sites, that's exactly the question that I asked at the beginning. And when I said waste team were 50 steps ahead, I wasn't joking. They really were. And they said, even if we were to open up some of the other sites, Hereford and Lempster would have to have stayed open for those 7 days. Hence why we, and the main operatives that operate across the county have to be used in Hereford and Lempster because the amount of traffic, and because it's also the disposal for our main waste collections. But that is exactly where I went to start off with. Just be assured, I really have tried my most to get it as fair as possible for Herefordshire residents.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Okay, well, I now put forward the recommendation. I think that Cabinet reviewed performance and financial outturn for 2019-20 as set out in appendices A, B, D, E, F and G, and has not identified any additional actions to be considered to achieve future improvement. And B, the Treasury Management Outturn report at Appendix C be recommended to the Council for approval. So the roll call for voting. Councillor Chowns.
For.
Councillor Crockett.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Harrington.
For.
Councillor Harvey. You're on silent, Councillor Harvey.
Sorry, 4.
Councillor Norman.
4.
Councillor Tyler.
4.
And myself, I'm 4 as well. So that is carried. Unless the monitoring officer believes I've missed anything, I will close the meeting. That's okay. So I close the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. You can now go in the garden and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you very much. Next meeting is the 23rd of July.